Good morning, everyone. Hope you're doing well. So, hi, everyone. As Mao mentioned, my name is Jayakrit. I'm the field CTO and a cloud architect at Dell Technologies. And I'm going to take you through this hybrid cloud technology for Microsoft Azure that VST ECS has offered in Philippines as Go-Cloud, and how actually this enables the locally hosted hybrid cloud approach for the enterprises. So let's get kick started, and I will start with a vision from a Microsoft Azure perspective, because this offering is very much aligned with Azure Public. So when you look at the Microsoft Azure ecosystem, the Azure in public, and there are extensions to it, what we call is Azure Stack Hub and HCI, to enable the Azure public cloud services everywhere, regardless of whether Microsoft have a Azure data center in particular country or a location. So as we can see, there are 60 plus Azure regions worldwide. And the expectation here is like, there are hundreds of service providers to join in this journey with Azure and bring these offerings to the partners and customers. And this is where I think that what exactly we are sharing with you today. It's branded as Go-Cloud by VST ECS, which runs on Azure Stack Hub technology in extension to Microsoft Azure Public Cloud. And it's very much differentiated for enterprise adoption. I'll cover that towards the end. Now, extending on the vision itself, there are enterprises, or there are reasons for providers or partners not able to extend those Azure Stack offering in country. So enterprises still have a choice to host this in their own data center to really bring in the adoption of the cloud technology, the speed and innovation, which is very much demanded by their business, running in their own data center. So all coming together, it's all intent is to deliver the Azure innovation everywhere, regardless of whether these data centers are there or not in your country. So it's we can still see there are still major gaps. Now, the beautiful example here is Philippines. Microsoft doesn't have an Azure public data center, and this is where Azure Stack Hub will extend Azure services to to in country. Now, if I have to ask you, why the enterprises would go for hybrid cloud? So there are clear use cases why this is the best approach for organizations to onboard as an approach when they are adopting cloud. And the first one you can see here in this case is really when applications and services are already hosted and say running in a public cloud, for those organizations who are really adopting cloud uh, in first place. So the hybrid cloud offers a seamless medium to still able to extend these applications which run in public, whereby there are reasons for that data to be running locally or closer to the users. Second use case you can see is for the application developers who are building new applications, who are building new services. They have to write these codes multiple times depending on the landing zones. Now, when there is a consistent environment on public and on premise, they just write their codes once and they have the ability to deploy all of them consistently anywhere without even making changes to the code level. And that's the beauty of the consistency that's being offered here. Lastly, third is really about, I would say, governance, security, and the control over the data, where you want your resources to be in control and in a very secure as per your own requirements. There could be sovereign reason, there could be government or public sector customers who need this kind of control. So this is where I think the ability to do so, yet having the consistent control plane across on and off, on off-premise clouds. So these are the reasons I think why the large number of enterprises are going with the hybrid cloud approach. So with Go-Cloud, which is built on Dell Technologies integrated system for Microsoft Azure Stack Hub, you have one hybrid cloud for delivering a consistent experience for both traditional applications as well as cloud native. So more and more what we are seeing, the enterprises are building new apps on containers, on platform as a service, uh, and microservices architecture. They are not just purely traditional virtual machines. So this is the beauty here, that this is the Azure Stack Hub, which was built specifically for the cloud, and the apps and services and tools are very consistent to the Azure public cloud. So as an operator or as a developer, you don't need to really learn all of these new tools. They are all, if you have a familiarity with the Microsoft, say, technologies, you're able to then easily develop or operate or administrate and manage and maintain all of that in a very seamless fashion. And once you understand these tools, how to use them in Azure Public, you very well know how to then apply these skills into Azure Stack Hub. So this isn't really a differentiated skill set, but it's very much how you reapply what you have learned in terms of your skills and resources. So take that, like Azure Stack Hub as a platform is not a different construct, but very much a part of an Azure Public or Azure in general, the ecosystem, with very identical set of tools for both users or developers and IT operations team to manage it consistently, right? So here I'm just comparing what does Azure Stack Hub on-premise, which is offered as Go-Cloud, versus Microsoft Azure Publics look like actually. If you look at from bottom up, the cloud infrastructure, it's very much built with the notion of how cloud is being deployed, which means fast and seamless and automated, and operate, which means that you have complete automation and around the lifecycle management. When you look at the services that are being offered, it's very similar to IaaS and PaaS services. However, there is a subset of services from Azure Public that are available today on Azure Stack Hub. When it comes to deployment tools or deployment approach, it's the same consistent ARM or Azure Resource Manager, which offers that deployment model. And of course, the tool set that eventually the administrators or end users are going to use. It's similar, very similar portal. So there's an API consistency around it from an Azure Public standpoint. Now, the next obvious question that enterprises has is really what services are available. If I have to look at from an Azure Public to Azure Stack Hub, what are the IaaS related, what are the PaaS related services that I can actually leverage upfront. So when you look at infrastructure as a service, what you can really leverage in terms of IaaS is, of course, the virtual machines. VM scale sets are extension that makes VMs available in terms of scalability or availability. You have also Docker containers supported, and of course the cloud storage and network services. On PaaS, on the platform as a service model, there are open source tools like Cloud Foundry, which can be made available for, say, cloud native application development. And then there are built-in tools and services which Microsoft today offers in Azure Public in form of like Azure Service Fabric, Azure Functions, and Azure App Services, so web apps. So all of these can be leveraged as a tool set and services on Azure Stack Hub on premises. Now, I'm just going to focus on a couple of key use cases as how enterprises can really apply to certain workloads, in their data center context. So the first one I would really focus on is about meeting regulations. It could be by country, by government, or by industry. And if you're able to think of like develop and deploy application with the cloud or with the Azure framework, but yet having the full flexibility to deploy on premises with the capability of Azure Stack Hub. And that is to simply meet the regulatory or policy requirement. So let's take an example. If you're a global organization who deploys such as expense reporting application, which is really all about deploying across each and every region or location, and yet need to be very somewhat custom to the region and having data stored, within country or within that particular location. So think of this, that Azure Public can be applied where the public cloud data center already exists because they meet the sovereignty requirements. However, in country like Philippines, when you don't have the data center, you can actually leverage Azure Stack Hub to deploy with the same set of codes, with the same set of deployment approach, and to deploy the same application. So you can see there is you know a lot of effort that you can cut down from a development as well as from a maintenance standpoint. So that's one use case. Second use case that I will focus on is where a lot of organizations today talking about digital transformation, and that leads to now application modernization of their existing portfolio. What it means is a lot of applications which are built on traditional monolithic architecture are being modernized with a framework like microservices architecture using the technologies like containers, Kubernetes, and PaaS. And this is where Azure Stack Hub can deliver a core set of modern application architecture on premises for the customers who can modernize their application portfolio. It gives a choice for them to really use a hybrid approach. What can go onto public cloud would go, and they can host it comfortably there. But what needs to be within their control, within their data center or closer to the users, and where it need to be computed, then it stays on premise or within country. So the architecture then that can offered here includes, you can see a various set of services which I spoke about, PaaS, like Azure Web App, mobile app, API apps, Cloud Foundry for open source. And I think of like then microservices architecture, which is Azure Service Fabric, thinking of containers with the help of Docker with support for both Windows and Linux, and now Azure Container Services. And of course, there's then the consistency of running Azure IaaS services. It's not the traditional virtualization approach where you choose a VM of your configuration, but these are very much optimized to certain type of workloads, and there are standard configuration of when it comes to deploying these VMs, and they offer additional capabilities like VM scale sets, which I spoke about earlier. So all this is great. What additional I think Tom did mention about is like, it comes to a marketplace from an ISV standpoint. So a lot of ISV today offers their services on Azure Public, and there is similar marketplace being built and supported on Azure Stack Hub. What that means is that an ISV now can give you that similar offering, the same offering in a SaaS-like model, in a consumption-like model through Azure Stack Hub. So comes to certain verticals or industry-specific solutions, there is an opportunity for you to actually leverage the ISV solutions on this stack. Now, talking about a bit around the security and compliance, because this is the biggest advantage of hosting workloads on Go-Qloud Azure Stack Hub, the security and compliance. Because first of all, from an infrastructure standpoint, it's hardened by default and offering the capabilities that you can think of, like data at rest, data in motion, network encryption. When it comes to authentication, like there is strong authentication between infrastructure components. There is certain operating system baseline which has been established. When it's running certain workloads in management, there are a lot of legacy protocols that we see in a virtualized world which have been disabled. It leverages a lot of like hardware security features. Like we talk about TPM, we talk about secure boot, UFI. All of these are basically being leveraged, being utilized here. And of course, the beauty of the Windows Server itself, when it comes to some of the security feature like credential protection or code integrity, or even like anti-malware. So these are the capabilities being baked into the OS that are being offered. And besides just the compliance from an infrastructure standpoint, right? There is a compliance paperwork that Microsoft has done, and that basically is like a third-party assessor organization which has done it for Microsoft Azure Stack Hub, and it delivers a document as an outcome to show you how Azure Stack infrastructure specifically meets some certain applicable, say, controls for certain major compliance standards which are being mentioned here. So you can think of this compliance where a lot of organizations spend a lot of energy, efforts, and money. It all comes baked into this offering. So you can simply jumpstart your journey with a certified and compliant architecture. And here's a brief comparison of Azure Stack, the Go-Qloud Azure Stack Hub versus a traditional infrastructure approach. Now you can think of this today, you have a traditional infrastructure hosting where you need upfront investment, which is quite large in terms of the expense. And it takes a lot of time to deploy. It takes a lot of efforts to maintain. And when it comes to ongoing, onboarding of the tenants, you still need manual processes. You might have scripted it, but that may break and that's not consistent. When it comes to lifecycle management of the infrastructure, which is running all these critical workloads for enterprises, are all manual. And then the cost of the security and compliance, which I mentioned earlier, right? You have to own that as an additional cost. So this is all infra, no PaaS services yet, and there are still physical limitations, that may impact from a business availability. Now, against this traditional approach, you can think of this Go-Qloud Azure Stack Hub, where you can onboard certain workloads with the minimal upfront cost. There is, very low monthly subscription that you pay on, so no capex. Deployment is all automated, and the patch management or the lifecycle management of the infrastructure is already being taken care by the provider, in this case VSTCS, and it's completely automated. Okay, that takes away the risk or avoids the risk of having your workload, the enterprise class workloads running from this platform. And on ongoing basis, when it comes to adding more services, adding more tenants, or adding more organization within your enterprise, then it can be again done in a very seamless fashion with very consistent tool sets, right? And then it's giving you the security and surety of data protection from a global compliance point of view, from not just that, but also having the support, the backend support from the on-site or in-country resources by VSTCS who can connect with you. Even given the the pandemic, we stay away as much we want, but you have a physical presence within the country. And of course, it extends beyond IaaS. It extends to the PaaS services where a lot of organizations today are focusing, bringing their portfolio of application being modernized, right? So just touching a little bit on the technology itself, this is powered by the Dell Technologies integrated system for Microsoft Azure Stack Hub. And this appliance is really beyond just bundling of software and hardware. It's really a built-in, purpose-built appliance for Microsoft Azure Services to run on-premise. And it has a very automated engineered approach when it comes to deployment as well as operations from a lifecycle management. Now, sustainability that I talk about is really about customers continue to add on their subscription and continue to renew their subscription, which simply means that if you need certain type of a service, it doesn't, you don't have to worry about the end of life of the infrastructure. We take care at the back end to make sure the sustainability of the infrastructure in order to support the services that you are onboarding, right? So that's the beauty of the cloud services offering. And here I'm just going to extend a little bit towards another offering from Azure Stack Hub to Azure Stack HCI, the hyper converged infrastructure, which again is a very purpose-built HCI operating system from Microsoft that delivered as an Azure public cloud service. So think of this as an enterprise class operating system, and not just that operating system, but it's actually built in for a software-defined data center running, software-defined compute, storage, and networking services, and yet supporting not just single but multiple stretch clustering across different data center with all the enterprise class features from an availability standpoint, like sync and async replication, and completely think of it as a OPEX cost. You are not paying anything upfront, which is licensed for a large number of cores on premise. But as you onboard and as you continue to grow, you continue to pay on use basis. So this is completely born hybrid with a deeper integration with Azure. And there are still certain tools that we are going to leverage. And that is what is being completely integrated from Dell Technologies point of view, like Windows Admin Center and System Center set of tools, which have a deeper integration from an infrastructure standpoint with our HCI OS. If you really look at and to understand a bit more how the stack plays across different, say, layer of services, bottom up, it's the fully validated and certified infrastructure, okay? And this is, it runs services, which I mentioned from a compute, software-defined storage and networking point of view. And you can license your Windows and Linux operating systems or virtual machines on it. Of course, there is no licensing for Linux, but the way you license today your tenant Windows operating system, you can bring your own licensing. And then there is the beauty of Azure Portal and Azure Arc, which is the public facing or public cloud services from an operational plane point of view, with added capabilities of backup and recovery and update management, yet embedded with on-premise management services like Open Manage integration with Windows Admin Center, and even with System Center certain tools. Now, this is all great for the different set of workloads. I spoke about traditional VMs. You can continue to run certain VDI and certain even database set of, because this is really performant infrastructure and not unlike the commodity hardware that runs in public clouds, and yet running and enabling the services or applications from a modernization stack point of view. So if you're looking to build and offer containers and Kubernetes on top of it, AKS or Azure Kubernetes Services is supported as well. Now, there are quick differentiators of Go-Cloud here that I would like to quickly talk about. Foremost, unlike public cloud data center, just take note, this is hosted in Philippines and operated locally. So the operation is local, hosting is local. And what that means from a hosting standpoint is it delivers much lower latency. There isn't any egress cost that is being imposed by VST ECS, and it does address the sovereignty requirements. So if you have customers from different critical, say, verticals from banking or even public sector, you are able to onboard them. Now, you also have an option of face-to-face interaction, such as like POC or demos before procuring the services. So I will give you a link where you can actually, if you're interested, you can sign up. And all this billing is actually pay-as-you-go based, okay? And a question being earlier asked, like, what is the certification of the data centers? So there is, the VST ECS data center, which is certified as like TIA 942, as rated like tier 2 data center. And beyond this, I think Azure Stack Hub itself is ISO 270 certified. And that what I spoke about, from a compliance standpoint, there is ready documentation to support it. So to kind of wrap it up, right? The interest in enterprise for hybrid cloud is, building momentum, and there are specific use cases which I spoke about, whether it's performance and latency and certain, the compliance or governance reasons. And this is where you can see this Azure Stack Hub or Go-Cloud offering running Azure Stack Hub plays a, extended role there. So if you're keen on trying this out as a demo, you can actually scan this QR code to show your interest, and the VST-ECS owners will connect with you to further plan this out. So I think this session would have provided you some better understanding of Go-Cloud offering that's running Azure Stack Hub and HCI, of course, powered by Dell Technologies. So in case if you have any queries, I will stay back for a while to see if there is anything in Q&A or in chat. So thanks for, I think, tuning in today, and I wish you a pleasant day ahead.